ist, dass sie gebrochen bin. Darf ich vorstellen, Herr Kompetenz, unser Gast aus Berlin. Haben Sie Ihren bestimmt hier Machen wir, was wollen wir. Ich bin der Letzte, wieder mal Sonntag zu absehen. Schön.
Good evening, everyone. Not used to microphones, so closer. This better? Okay. I would do it extemporaneously if I were a little bit younger. Unfortunately, that doesn't work anymore. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read some of this off to you. But first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming to this evening's activities. Before we begin, I want to extend a special thanks to Maida Caleb and the Dvořák American Heritage Association under the auspices and support of the Bohemian Benevolent and Literary Association for hosting this event. Without their support, we would not be here this evening. I also want to thank the University Press of Kentucky for their enthusiasm and agreement to publish my mother's memoir. There's a long story behind the publishing, and I'm not going to go into it this evening, but I'm telling you, it's been quite a chore, and it started way back in 1992. The publishing was a wish my mother had before she passed away, and now that wish has been fulfilled. I also want to thank the House of Time Ensemble as well for the musical tribute, which you will be hearing shortly. Finally, I thank Bill Madison for doing such a masterful job of editing and assisting with the publication of this memoir. There's a slight misconception as to the author of the memoir. In fact, the author was my mother, and anyway, I feared that my mother's draft, written in her personal expressive style, would be beyond Bill's interest as an editor. To my surprise and relief, after scanning through the manuscript, Bill responded, "This is wonderful. The sing-song of the words is like music. I can work with this easily." And he did. He's produced a wonderful book. And so here we are today for the launch of my mother's memoir, My Life in Song. Let me now introduce you to Bill for his few words. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, golly, thank you, Maida. And special thanks also to Scott Barnes, whose husband, Brian Kello, wrote the beautiful foreword to the book, and he is here with us tonight. I can confirm that Novotná was an ardent booster of the Dvořák American Heritage Association because in my interactions with her, she never failed to mention the campaign to save the Dvořák house. She was too gracious to come right out and say it, but in hindsight, I understand that she wanted me to pitch in too. For her, just bringing up the subject in a letter or in conversation was a strong-arm tactic. But I was young and very naive in those days, and on the afternoon I spent with her in her home, I didn't pick up on her hints or much of anything else. I had listened to her for about 5 minutes until I had to interrupt and ask, "Who is this person you keep talking about?" "Dvořák!" she exclaimed. "Surely you have heard of the great Czech composer." "Oh, you mean Dvořák." This led to the awkward confession that I don't speak Czech. "Oh, but you must," said Novotná. This led to another awkward confession that I flunked Russian in college. I was, in fact, such an abject failure that my university has asked me never to tell anyone I studied there. I remain an embarrassment to us all. "Ugh," Novotná said, "Czech is much easier than Russian." Well, despite her reassurance, I never did study Czech. And I've never gotten over the sense that I have let Novotná down. She had such hopes for me. This is one of those occasions, a time when I really should have followed her advice. So tonight, as I mangle words and put the accent on the wrong syllables, I hope you will understand even if you don't forgive me. Novotná spoke and wrote excellent English, and her two favorite words in the language were lovely and charming. She used them constantly, and in her person, she defined them. In the memoir, she writes of a conversation she had with the Italian poet Gabriele D'Annunzio. Charm, D'Annunzio said, and I'm quoting, is the elusive quality that men and women have tried to analyze and describe for centuries. Physical beauty had little to do with it. History provides many instances of people who lacked beauty, yet whose attractive personalities changed the world. A striking example was Voltaire, who, though physically almost repellent, drew others to him through his brilliant intellect and irresistible personal manner. Of course, D'Annunzio himself, whom Novotná considered pretty darned ugly, was doing something quite similar as we talked. The poet concluded that charm is an inner quality that shines forth and that attracts those who come within its sphere. Though no single quality defines charm, several qualities, when added together, can always be found in charming people. For example, they possess enthusiasm, even over the smallest things in life. Many of the attributes of charm can be learned and developed, and many of them must be, if we are to function at all successfully in the modern world as effective individuals. The cultivation of charm is the duty of all who wish to give their lives distinction, unquote. Well, certainly now that I have spent so much time with Novotná's memoir, I can see that she gave her own life distinction, even in the finest sense of the word, because there was nobody else like her. She was distinct from every other person on earth. If I tried to depict her in a novel, and yet another awkward confession, I did, nobody would believe it. A person might get away with telling her story as a sort of fairy tale. We might think of her as a 20th century Cinderella who went to the ball and stayed there for the rest of her life. She was a tailor's daughter who married a baron. President Masaryk treated her like his niece. Albert Einstein and Karl Čapek were her dinner companions when she was still a very young woman. The Duke of Windsor played piano for her when she sang. And when she returned to the castle, like Cinderella, but this was Prague Castle, President Havel embraced her. She was a legendary beauty who spent much of her time dodging passes from kings, conductors, movie stars, and Gabriele D'Annunzio. She was also a devoted Catholic wife and mother. She was a skilled musician who was also such a skilled actress that she was able to give compelling performances without singing a note. Please consider that she made her first movie in the silent era. She was an artist who could move back and forth easily from the realms of opera, operetta, Broadway, Hollywood, radio, and television. She sang with Ezio Pinza and with Bing Crosby. She clowned with Carl Valentin and with Abbott and Costello. Richard Strauss sought her to sing his work, and so did Cole Porter. She was also an ardent patriot who spent 50 years in exile from her homeland. And as Susan indicated, she never missed an opportunity to show up, to do everything she could for the Czechoslovak Red Cross, for any relief organization. And after the communist takeover, she continued struggling and fighting on behalf of the people she had left behind. Ultimately, she may have been the only person who could get away with telling her story. To her, the extraordinary things that happened to her seemed perfectly normal and natural in so many ways. Of course, Louis B. Mayer spent more than a decade trying to sign her to a movie contract. What else would he do? Of course she had dinner with kings. Several kings, in fact. Well, one does have to eat, doesn't one? Yet even she seems to have recognized something of the fairy tale quality of her life. She begins the memoir with a prelude entitled Magic. Magic brought me to America, she says. As I thought about what I wanted to say tonight, it occurred to me that when Novotná talked about charm, she may have meant something beyond attractive personalities. Because my own experience of her was magical. I discovered her one evening at the office where I worked. My supervisor, a woman named Lise Simonet, was going through the effects of a friend who had recently died. He was a tenor who sang in a Broadway adaptation of Offenbach's La Belle Hélène in the 1940s. Helen Goes to Troy starred a woman named Jarmila Novotná, and my boss, who was herself a musician and one of the sternest critics I ever knew, went on and on about what a marvelous artist Novotná was. You mean she was an opera singer in a Broadway musical? Oh, yes. Now, while Lise Simonet talked, I flipped through the pages of a magazine that had a big spread of photos from Helen Goes to Troy. One chorus girl seemed to be in almost every picture. She was tall and slim and very, very beautiful. And there she was in another picture. And another. And another. This chorus girl must have been sleeping with the producer, I said. Oh no, Lise Simonette said. That is Novotná. Now, let's be honest, when I say Central European opera singer from the 1940s, the mental image you get is not a woman who looks like Jarmila Novotná. And here's where the magic begins. The picture that I was looking at that precise moment is the same picture that the art department at the University Press of Kentucky chose independently, without any input from me, for the cover of the memoir. At the very least, you've got to admit that's an uncanny coincidence. Almost instantly, I was transformed into a young man who was sort of a hero of an F. Scott Fitzgerald short story, or Tamino in The Magic Flute. I became the kind of guy who falls in love with a picture. But here's the thing I've noticed. As soon as you find out about Novotná, you want to know more. So I went to the record store and bought one of her albums. I think the very first thing I heard her sing was the song To the Moon from Rusalka. I'd never heard the aria before. And it's a beautiful recording with only piano accompaniment. I was transported. I was hooked. I was in love. This went on for years. And then one day, I decided to write her a fan letter. I addressed it to the Metropolitan Opera, who can get a letter to anybody who has ever performed with the company anywhere in the world. And so, several weeks later, I received Novotná's response. And this was not the kind of great lady writing to a young admirer letter that you might suppose. There was a little bit of that, but she moved very quickly on to other things that she had in her mind. The Velvet Revolution had succeeded, she had just returned from Prague, and she was full of news. And now, she was back in New York, and had I heard about the campaign to save the Dvořák house? Around the same time, my friend Kathy was hired to take photographs for an Insights Guide to New York. Her editor wanted pictures that would represent the cultural richness of the city, including the performing arts. Kathy wanted an opera singer, and what about the singer for whom I was working at the time, Teresa Strauss? She'll never do it, I said. She's a bigger recluse than Greta Garbo. I thought for a moment, what about Novotná? So I wrote again with my phone number, and a few days later, there was Novotná on my answering machine. For you young people, that's what we had before voicemail. I called back and we set up an appointment. I wanted to bring her a gift, a tribute, but I was in graduate school at the time, so diamonds were out of the question. I thought of her signature song, the aria Meine Lippen sie küssen so heiß from Juditha, which Franz Lehár had written just for her, because, of course, Franz Lehár wrote an operetta just for her. Maybe I could find something with lips on it. Well, I don't know if it was ever possible to find anything tasteful with lips on it, but the few things I found in 1990, coffee mugs, Mylar balloons, were hopelessly tacky. I settled on a single red rose, which was a tribute to another of her roles, signature roles. Novotná understood instantly. She opened the door, saw me standing there, and exclaimed, "Ach, you are the Rosenkavalier!" While Kathy took pictures, Novotná told stories. And as I read the memoir, I realized that every single story she told is in the book. A lot of this, I understand, comes from a series of lecture recitals, which she performed in the 1950s, anecdotes interspersed with arias, or, depending on your point of view, arias interspersed with anecdotes. The lectures were a kind of a rough draft for the book she would write 30 years later, and when we met her, she had just completed the Czech version of her memoir. Kathy and I were effectively getting a sneak preview. The story of the performance of Die Fledermaus, when a bat attacked her in the middle of Chacun à son goût, we heard it. The story of the time she was singing The Queen of the Night when she was 18 years old, and so she patted her bosom to make herself look more matronly, possibly even older than the woman who was playing her daughter. And then, in the middle of the big aria, she realized the padding was slinking slowly down her body, and there was nothing she could do. We heard that. Novotná was 83 at the time, and she was still slender and beautiful, elegant, in her robin's egg blue Chanel suit. And she was charming. Now, Kathy needed space to take her pictures, and before I could stop her, Novotná sprang into action, moving heavy furniture out of the way. Again, she was 83. Please, let me do that, I said. Oh, it is easy, she said. When I was a girl, I was in the Sokol, you know, the Czech Gymnastic Society. See what I mean? She never missed an opportunity to plug Czech culture. And so the afternoon went along. I'm pleased to say that one of the pictures Kathy took is included in the memoir now. And at one point, Kathy asked if Novotná had any sheet music, so that the readers of the Inside Guide could see that she was singing. Novotná trotted off, came back with the sheet music, and started to sing. Not pretending to sing, really singing. For an audience of the two of us. She was 83, and the song just happened to be Voci di Primavera, Voices of Springtime. She couldn't have made a more poignant choice. She was at a stage of her life when she knew there were more springtimes behind her than ahead. Her voice was just an echo of what it used to be, but it was still sweet and clear and filled with joy. And we heard it. Magic. I saw her one last time at a gala concert in celebration of Richard Tauber's centennial. The conductor was a man named Victor Simonet, who just happened to be the son of the woman who first told me about Novotná. I'm telling you, the coincidences just keep adding up. I met her daughter just once on my first day of work at Opera News. I met the president of the Czech Republic just once when I was with CBS News. While the camera crew changed tapes, Václav Havel and I talked about Novotná. He was a fan. His face lit up when I mentioned her. And boy, was he disappointed when Dan Rather interrupted us and wanted to talk about politics again. And then one day, a fellow named George Daubek got in touch with me. I'd written a little essay about my encounter with Novotná and posted it on my blog. George had seen it, and he asked his daughter, Tatiana, to track me down. Because kids today, they know how to use those interwebs. Over lunch, George brought up the subject of the memoir. A bestseller in the Czech Republic, it had never been published in English. Would I be willing to help? We wrestled at first with the translation of the Czech manuscript, but then George came up with a different manuscript in English. Because during the years when Novotná worked on the memoir, she wrote whenever an idea occurred to her in English, Czech, and German. And at some point, hoping to appeal to an American publisher, she wrote the whole thing all over again in English. The memoir ends with the publication of the Czech memoir, proof that it was written after her. I hadn't read more than 2 paragraphs before I started to laugh. Your mother does not need a translator, I said. The rest was easy. Consider it. Now, as I say, the more you find out about Novotná, the more you want to know. That's her charm, her magic. The catch is that now it's harder to find out about Novotná. Lise Simonet, who not only heard Novotná many times, but who also did impressions of her, died in 2005. My friend Jack Guilford, who played in Fledermaus with her, died in 1990. Tab Hunter, who co-starred with her in On Springer, died just a few months ago. There are fewer and fewer of us to help spread the word. But now there's a book, too. Her book. Her words. Her voice. And her magic. So you can pick up a copy of this wonderful book with proceeds to go to the Dvořák American Heritage Association in the reception room at the end of the performance. You're in for a treat, but you're in for another treat right now because Tatiana and her friends are going to perform, and I'm going to hold on to this microphone just long enough to pass it to her. Come on out.
We'd like to thank DAHA, Dvořák American Heritage Association, for having us here tonight. and Maida for all the correspondence and getting House of Time here. William, you're amazing. So thank you for all your hard work, and thanks to my dad for working all these years, getting all the getting all this material together. I know the book is one thing, but then the entire archive that he's been basically sitting in his basement just for days on end, hours on end, years on end, putting it all together. I think we can really thank him for doing that, and his mother would be really proud. This is House of Time. We have some selections of music to play for you. I was going to say one more thing, I think, but I might have forgotten what that was. Do you want to say 2 words about?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, we're House of Time, and we perform around New York City mostly. We have a concert series down by Lincoln Center, and so we put together a brief-ish program inspired by Tatiana's grandmother and the occasion itself. Although obviously she was a singer, none of us are. We can't do any of the music that she actually performed. But we thought we would focus on 3 composers. One is Franz Krommer, otherwise known as Ferdinand Krommer in German, who was a Bohemian composer who we do not believe gets enough attention, and was a contemporary of Mozart, the new Mozart. The second composer on tonight's program is Dvořák, because obviously. And the third composer is Mozart, both because Mozart is so closely associated with Prague, especially in his later years, and because I have it on good authority that Jarmila Novotná thought that Mozart was the key to singing, and if you could sing Mozart well, you could sing anything, because she thought there were a lot of opera singers running around that could sing all kinds of things, but really couldn't do justice to Mozart, and she could, and so we're giving pride of place to him. Hope you enjoy.